The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in. All right, so Marty and Mel here. We are going to dive into a conversation today that is very meaningful, very relevant, and important to discuss and dive into. However, it is a heavier topic and conversation.
It is, and I know we mentioned this. This is very raw, and some of the stories and some of the dialogue we're going to share. Right now, what we're asking you is before we get into this conversation, if you feel like you're not in a good place, if you feel like you need help, if suicide is on your mind, please dial the 900 or call the National Suicide Hotline Prevention 1-800-273-8255. You can start there. Call a friend, call a buddy, call a family member. Please know you are not alone. Okay, you're not alone. I know it may feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, but trust me, you're not alone. You have a fantastic family out there, numerous resources. We're going to talk about that today. So Mel, hopefully we can help some folks out there, and hopefully we can just share and reflect on some of our own experiences.
Absolutely, because this is a conversation that whether you have experienced this stuff in your life, in your past, might be something you're going through, or maybe someone close to you is going through, or for some, this can feel kind of a removed, irrelevant conversation. But nonetheless, we really want to dive into the human aspect, because a lot of these prevention initiatives, there is a process, there's a structure. Many people don't seek those resources for the fear of their privacy being disclosed. So being able to see there's a multifaceted approach and way to nourish yourself and really optimize things within yourself so you can practice self-care, practice prevention, but then also being able to hold space for those who might be struggling. So I want to start with asking Marty, I know Team Red, White, and Blue does a lot of stuff with this kind of this topic, and I don't know if you want to share anything to begin.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, yesterday, on the 22nd of every month, regardless of the day, weekday, weekend, what we do here in San Antonio, Team Red, White, and Blue San Antonio, we get together, we find a location. It could be downtown. Last night just happened to be Landa Park in New Braunfels. So anybody that's been out there to New Braunfels, there's duckies out there, there's water. It's very calming. It's a very nice space to bring family members together, veterans, their kids, and just bring a group of folks together. So what we try to do on the 22nd of every month is host a suicide awareness and prevention walk. And I know early on, after the attacks on 9/11, and we proceeded, we began this engagement with the global war on terror, and there was a time, that it was said that 22 veterans a day were taking their lives, right? So there are organizations like Mission 22, and that number 22 has kind of stuck with the veteran community as it relates to suicide. So what we try to do is on the 22nd of every month, as we come together, one is to walk in solidarity more than anything. We walk in solidarity with the family, with the service member. We meet and we try to connect, and we just try to talk about, hey, we all are carrying some sort of burden. I just retired. Maybe, my children just moved away. I'm an empty nester. I just had a baby. I don't feel physically fit, or I don't feel like I'm where I need to be. I just lost a soldier. I just lost an airman to suicide. You know, I'm going through divorce, and there's a lot of heavy topics, heavy subjects that folks are dealing with. And what we want to do is we want to acknowledge that, hey, you're not alone. You're not going through this by yourself. And if there are thoughts of suicide, or if you've considered suicide or have had any sort of suicide ideations, we want you to know that we're here for you. Team Red, White, and Blue is here for you, right? And we have a number of resources. Again, I cited the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 800-273-8255. And I'm going to repeat that several times because that's an important number to have. But what what we're trying to do is we're not a mental health provider. We're not part of that. We don't have any medical expertise, but what we do provide is that shoulder to kind of cry on, that reassurance that says, hey, Mel, I'm really going through a tough time right now. Like my wife, my husband says that, they want to leave and they don't want to be married anymore. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't have any friends. That's my only source of income. Or, hey, I lost a buddy in combat, and I hear his voices, and I don't know how to turn off those voices, and all of these stressors and the financial aspect of it, coming out of COVID, still dealing with COVID, you're more isolated again. So all we're trying to do as Team Red, White, and Blue is just bring the community together to walk in solidarity, to honor our teammates and family members who have lost their battle to suicide, and acknowledge that we're sorry and we want to do better. But more importantly is for our members that are in our group that are walking with us, is to reassure them that they're not alone, that whatever they're carrying, we're there for them, and we're going to help any way we can.
I love that you guys focus so much on the human piece because, in my work with, so I am a yoga therapist, and I do a lot of work around trauma recovery using somatics and healing mental health, or as adjunct to support healing mental health challenges. But we go through the body to heal that and what it is. So to give an example, trauma is, and every example you just shared is trauma, right? It's loss, it's disconnect. And trauma is essentially the disconnection between the mind and the body. Because what happens is that an experience or a circumstance shows up in our life, an event, and then that disassociates us from the physical body, or it disassociates us from our mind. And that's just a brief introduction to this. So the work I've done is with the physical piece. I find that a lot of people who are struggling, or it's that early, I almost think of it as like there's a cycle of an early onset of like the experiencing a big life change and not knowing where to go. And as a society, we're so disconnected from our bodies, and we tend to also be disconnected from community. And in the work that I've done and seen, the most impactful containers that are held for people are those where we get to honor the human. And it's just like, not only are we there for you, or I'm listening, I'm holding space. Because a big piece of this, the reason I think that this topic is so challenging is because the solutions they're subjective, and it's like, what is the ultimate solution? It's not something that's just a physical, tangible solution. It's going to be different person to person. So our ability to meet people where they're at is so imperative. And so these things like what Team Red, White, and Blue does to just the connection aspect. When I think about a lot of the organizations that are really trying to support this, it's that human, holding space for the human, that it's okay if you don't have all the answers, because I can't go back in time. I can't change time. I can't fix things for you, but I can hold you as you process, as this now moment changes into the next. I often say, one breath at a time.
I've been here in San Antonio for 4 years, and I've taken part. I mean, this suicide awareness walk that we host, and we invite different organizations, different partners to join us. And I tell you that every single walk, I learn something about another person, but more importantly, I learned something about myself, right? And how you reconcile your own life and your own experiences versus, again, a mom who's really struggling with it could anything, you name it, or another soldier. And we make fun of each other, of course. Oh, you're Air Force and you're Army, and that little banter back and forth. But that's fun, and that is also, I feel like, part of the healing where, okay, I'm not alone. Like I can actually smile and just kind of take that next step, take that next breath, and not feel so overwhelmed by life. And I love what we do. And again, I can tell you how much I love Team Red, White, and Blue and what we do. But I'll tell you that as a veteran community, kind of holistically, I love that we are paying attention again to the human and saying, I don't have the medical background to help you, but if you need to cry on my shoulder, I'm here. Let's go.
It takes a village. And that's the thing too, is, as humans, as people, as community, it's imperative that we do pull our medical professionals in to support this and also be able to hold our brothers and sisters. It's important to be able to listen and hold space for people, because what actually happens is, so I'm going through a hard time and I share something with you. What happens in my brain is literally that I'm able to hold a negative experience with a positive, which is coming from your compassion, from you listening. And this is called neuroplasticity. This is literally how we heal the trauma in our bodies, is through pairing these negative, positive experiences. And it helps develop pathways so it's more like livable, right? And that's what a big piece of what happens in psychotherapy. But this can also happen with friends, family, and going to different events like this where we are able to share or we're able to laugh. I'll never forget, after a hard time, I had asked a lady, I was struggling with something, and I had asked her, I just don't know how to heal this. And it was kind of an impulsive, I just don't know how to heal this. And she said, honey, you just got to create new experiences.
That's funny. And that's amazing. I'll tell you what, that is really cool. And I'll tell you, every time we have a social or we do our regular walks outside of the suicide awareness walks, I'm drawn to the medical field. So we have a lot of folks that are medical professionals, either nurses or in some capacity they're in the medical community, right? And I'm always really conscious about how are they doing? Mm-hmm. How are you coping with working 12, 15-hour shifts in this COVID environment? Or you're a medic that's deployed 5 times. How are you dealing with, I know you went to Afghanistan, I know you went to Iraq, or you are in a village in Africa just helping rebuild after a natural disaster, and you see truly the suffering and loss of human life. How are we taking care of them? Because they're the front lines. I want somebody to be there for me, but I'm always conscious about, well, who's there for them? Who's there for the chaplain, and who's there for the spouse who has to welcome that service member or back home, and you kind of get the brunt of all that, of those experiences. So I'm really drawn to our medical professionals, and I always ask simple questions like, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And you notice I asked that 3 times because we are a low context society, in the United States. Low context means that, if you ask me, how are you doing? Oh, I'm good. And then you kind of go on about your day. More high context societies, they value more family relationship culture, that they really want to know how you're doing. But it's hard for us, culturally to give in and open up. To
express it, right?
Yes.
Because oftentimes, too, so there's 2 pieces, right? Oftentimes, we don't even know how to express how we're feeling. The example of this past year with our medical providers, to an extent, there's an aspect of disassociation from the day-to-day. You just got to go in, you do it, you get it done, you take care of things, and then you turn off, you turn on, right? And I almost feel we do this in so many things. But then on the other side, when I ask, how are you doing? A lot of times people don't even listen. Like, I might ask you, hey, how are you doing? When what's interesting about this too is we might not realize that often our asking of if we're not conscious about how we're asking people how they're doing, it really is more about, I just want to make sure your internal weather is good to make me feel safe, right? It's like, okay, you're good, so I feel safe. Because if you tell me that you're not good, that, that's why I might bypass it or redirect the conversation, because again, we have gotten so disconnected to our own sensory awareness and how we feel. So this actually is a really beautiful segue into the concept of prevention. And it makes me think of so much of, because I'm a total nerd. And as you guys get to know me on here, you're going to know, like, I am such a nerd because I'm blown away and fascinated by how resilient our bodies are and how resilient and adaptive our bodies are to endure the things we endure. So when we think about, when I was talking earlier about that disconnection, in that we tend to lose the ability to identify that, oh, I'm angry, or, oh, this is that, or be able to apply compassion to somebody's choices, right? And so when I think about prevention, generally kind of in a conventional way, it's like, let's talk about suicide prevention after there's been a death by suicide. But if we look at this collectively as a community, that we're always operating in prevention suicide, which is optimizing joy in life, right? Vitality. I'm curious, Marty, if you want to share some thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. In my 2 decades of service, I can't even tell you what you just said is correct. We have a suicide, let's have training. After a suicide, let's all come together. Hey, this is what happened. Let's take some training, make sure that we know how to respond. And many times I used to feel like, why are we doing this after the fact? Why aren't we doing this all the time? Why aren't we looking and taking care of our airmen and making sure that they have the tools they need to, one, to be resilient and to really deal with the stressors of life? Because no matter what we think, the world isn't rated G or rated PG. The world is rated R. It is a mean and nasty world out there, and we're trying to balance a number of things, career and family and everything. So compound that with any sort of trauma or experiences in combat, and that just exponentially increases that level of stress that somebody carries.
Yeah.
But like you said, if we just begin to have those open conversations and to be willing to say, how are you doing? Well, I'm not doing very well. Well, talk to me. Well, let's go for a walk. Let's share what it is that is on your mind. I think that I think we can do better. But there's been a number of experiences where I've been a facilitator talking about suicide. And in the Air Force, we talk about ACE, ask, care, and escort, right? ACE, you ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? Yes. Okay, care, the steps. Now I'm here. Now I'm listening to you. I'm not going to leave you alone. Make sure that we get you the right help. But again, I think it's so mechanical sometimes. It doesn't feel natural, especially if you don't have a relationship with that individual that you're asking if they're okay.
Right.
So Mel, if I don't know you and I'm like, hey, how you doing? Cool. Well, I don't even know anything about Mel. I just passively just want to make sure, like you said, she's good, I'm good, so we're good in this space. And sometimes that's where I think we miss the mark. Instead of truly saying, how are you doing? And then truly be ready for that response of, well, I'm not doing very well. Okay, boom, I'm here.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is that we have to realize that you have to earn the right to be intimately connected with someone or to know those deeper pieces. Because if we're just checking the boxes, like, tell me, these, that you're struggling. Oh, I see it seems like you're struggling with alcoholism or these, behavioral issues. So what's going on? We have to build relationship and trust with people to earn that right for them to share. And when we do that, and literally sometimes building that trust is simply just asking, like, about the things they're interested in and really connecting with people based off of what brings them joy. A conversation that's happening a lot, at least in the Army right now, is around spiritual hygiene, which I think it's just personal development really is the nice way to say it, because it's not, when people hear spiritual, they go into religion, and that's a piece of it, but that's not the whole thing. And a big piece of when we talk about spiritual hygiene, or really personal development, it's about identifying when you're going through hard times, what helps you through hard times. And what helps you are the things that bring you joy, comfort, vitality, connection. And so having more conversations where we're cultivating that in our military, in the families, in veteran communities.
My first supervisor, back in 1996, and I was overseas at an assignment overseas. I was by myself, no family. I didn't have any kids at the time. But my very first supervisor in the military committed suicide. He took his life. He took his life in a dormitory. It was pretty violent. And what was really hurtful about that, because it hurt. It really, really hurt. And what was really hurtful is we did have a relationship. I mean, we would hang out, and he would take care of us, and we would take care of him. We knew about his kids. We knew about his wife. We knew about his life in Guam and all of the plans moving forward. And then one day, he's just gone. And it's like, I was like, we did everything right. We were having these conversations. We were laughing. We were joking. And sometimes it feels like no matter if it's and I talked about ACE and the program that, during my time in the Air Force, it's a great program. I was not trying to demean it, but it just feels mechanical. It feels like, if you don't accept it. So again, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we did everything right. We went out to eat. We used to go work out together, and we still lost him to suicide. So I was at a loss. I'm a young service member. It's like, how do I deal with this? I've never had to deal with suicide. And now there's a gap, right? There's a family missing a father. There's a coworkers missing, a supervisor. The Air Force lost a valuable resource. The Department of Defense lost a valuable resource. And sometimes it can get very depressing just to think like, man, we did everything right, and he looked like he was doing everything right. So I don't know. Have you had an experience like that, Mel?
Yeah, actually, what you're making me think of is, and this is a really challenging thing to share and say, because, we all want to fix and help everyone. But the truth is that our own self-accountability to our life and learning about our own worth is how we serve others as well. Because if I don't maintain my mental wellness and take care of myself, I've had a history of struggling. There's a reason I practice yoga and meditation, mindfulness. I mean, when my husband deployed to Afghanistan, that's when I did my yoga teacher training, was because I wanted to bring yoga to help the military, but also, he's gone, and I had just moved to Fort Bragg, or I was getting ready to move to Fort Bragg. So figuring out who I am as a person. And I want to share just a brief story. I had an experience because when I was in high school, my best friend and another good friend of mine died in a car accident. And that triggered a lot of mental health struggles that I experienced in high school. And it's, to this day, it's still hard because it was, losing your best friend at age 15 it's just, there's no words. But what happened is that in the process of that time frame, there was another person that was really close to me struggling with mental health that I was as well. And for a time, we would co-regulate through a lot of dysfunctional behaviors, which people do that all the time. And, but the thing is I have a lot of compassion because it helped us survive the pains, right? And I think that a lot of, though this is not this is not a military experience, this is my real life experience, I can see that also happening in the military. But over time, my dear friend was struggling with suicidal ideology, and I ended up going and getting, we made a suicide pact. Again, this is hard stuff to talk about, but I'm sharing because I think that we all have these stories in our pockets, right, of our own personal challenges and experiences. But what ended up happening was with the pact, I ended up tattooing it on the quote that related to the pact. I tattooed it on my body. And I was so excited to show it to her. And about 2 weeks after I got it tattooed, I found out that I had gotten a call. She attempted, and she was in the hospital. And in that moment, I felt like my world shattered, because I was like, didn't we have a pact? Was my life not worthy enough? And it turned into this, I love you so much. How could you not care about me? Or how can you make those choices? And in that time after, and then it was kind of very, very ironic because I showed her my tattoo in the hospital. It's a crazy story. But what it did for me was I had to ask myself, why am I choosing to live and move forward in my life? Why am I making, am I making choices for my own life? And it was the first time I felt like I reclaimed myself. And, when you're sharing the story of it's like people can seem fine or they can do all these things, it makes me, made me reflect on that, because so much of our own, like we tend to project so much of like, okay, are they okay? Are they okay? Are they okay? But asking like, well, what is my okayness? So, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. And I know, again, we talk about these conversations being raw, and it's hard. It's hard to open up, but I do feel, I can tell you from my own experiences, some of my more challenging experiences, the more I share them and the more I talk about them, the easier they are to share. And I feel like that is also part of the healing, and I can reclaim back my self-worth. Mm-hmm. Like, my life is worth living. I think my story can help, someone else move forward. Like your story, we had a pact. That's powerful. That's very, very powerful, because I guarantee you right now, we have, our military families, veterans, buddies, kids, right? Kids that hang out because, well, my parents are deployed and I'm kind of at the house by myself and I got to care for my little ones. They deal with this trauma as well, and they feel these deployments. But I can definitely empathize with hey, as a military member, I was the one that was always gone. And I'm like, I got to focus. I got a mission to take care of. The family's fine because they haven't written me a letter. I was, at the time when there was letter and there was Yahoo Messenger. No Facebook, no social media or anything like that. But I think it's important that we continue to have these conversations, because believe it or not, as we are sharing and we realize, again, we're connected.
Yeah.
We're connected with a shared experience, and I think we can learn from one another and heal through these experiences. I have a real quick story to share. I was a teacher for 2 years. I taught at a high school after I retired, and I was when I was a high school student, I was sexually assaulted by a male teacher, right? And it took 20 plus years to acknowledge that and to actually share that story.
Wow, thank you for sharing
And
here.
and the first time I shared that was in a classroom with some military members, students. But all of them were gracious enough to listen to my story, and they were like, "You're going to be fine." And it was, I tell you, it was a ton of bricks that I was carrying. And you think about these suicidal ideations, and you don't want to acknowledge, I've never thought about that. Or you do a survey with the military, have you ever thought about suicide? Oh no, I'm good. But when the lights are off and you're by yourself, or you're laying in bed and your mind is going 100 miles an hour, I'd be lying if I told you that I'd never had a suicidal, ideation, because I know I have based on that and other traumas. Well, the story what I do want to share is, when I was a teacher in high school, I had one of my students, fantastic student. She was definitely, you're not supposed to have favorites. But she was definitely my favorite. I'd come in and I would tell stories about my daughter and her high school experience, and and the kids used to look back at me and think, man, like, I don't even have a dad in my life, and here you are just praising your kid. So one day, this student, she's like, "Hey, Sarge, can I talk to you?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's chat," and because I had shared my story of the sexual assault. I felt comfortable because it was relative to the conversation we were having. So she came to me and she says, I've never said this to anyone, but she had a shared experience. She says, I was a victim of sexual assault by a family member. Okay. So from there, we formed a bond, right? And I said, well, are you okay? Do we need to go see a counselor? Do we need to go see anyone right now? How are you feeling right now? But it was amazing how she just looked me in the eye. She's like, no. She's like, I feel good. I feel comfortable sharing this with you, because I have yet to share this with anyone. And she finally felt that same burden kind of come off her shoulders. What was really interesting is how we were obviously 30 years apart in age, and she was able to connect. She was able to connect with my story. And I'm thinking, man, if I was able to connect with her, and I can connect with other military members, other family members that have gone through, again, for example, sexual trauma or assault or anything, then I need to do that. That is my mission. And if like in this podcast, if somebody's listening and somebody has gone through something like this, a sexual trauma or an assault, you're going to be fine. Like, we're here for you. You have a community that cares about you. That one experience does not define your whole life. And that's what I told my students, that experience will not define your life. You can love, you can have intimate relationships. When you fall in love with your husband down the road and you have kids, do not let that one experience, but you do need to talk to a professional. You do need to speak to a professional, because this is something that you need to continue to monitor and ensure that this doesn't overwhelm you with all of the other facets of your life. But I thought that was really cool that, again, it was just another awesome experience that I was able to, I feel like she helped me grow as well, thinking, wow, this is amazing. Like, this story, although it sucked, it's something that I could definitely carry on and maybe help somebody else.
Yeah, well, one thing when we share our stories, we take strength from others. And sometimes when we can recognize ourselves in someone else's story, it's the permission to acknowledge where we are at, so then we can begin to lean into the resources to support us. Because, when we talk about suicide prevention, generally it is compounded, like you said. It's not just, it's things over time, and it's regulation, and it's connection, it's meaning in life. So the importance of being able to identify where we are, how we feel, or, for some, using therapy and to find ways to make sense of our experiences. And then also building relationships where we're able to neutralize the pain, right? And because any type of trauma, it lives in our bodies, whether we're really little to being however old, it's going to live in the body, because your body is designed to protect you and help you survive. I mean, bottom line, your body does not care really about the feelings. It cares, did I survive that experience? Which is why it'll protect and guard and create these patterns that can lead to dysfunctional habits later on. So the importance, for sure. So what a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing, because
I do want to ask you, I know based on your, you as a yoga instructor, I hear the term, and I've read it, I hear it all the time, mindfulness. And I got to be honest with you, I don't fully understand mindfulness. I know what the word means, but just break it down. What does it mean as it relates to suicide prevention, and how does mindfulness work?
It's a beautiful question. So mindfulness, to sum it up, is simply paying attention on purpose without reaction. And this is being able to say, so for example, especially as it relates to dealing with mental health or reactivity, is to say, wow, I feel like I'm going to explode. I feel like I'm going to freak out, and just witnessing it. Like, it's about slowing down time and just witnessing, wow, I feel like I'm going to explode. And then you can use a breath. You can use sensory input, such as touching the ground, the 5 senses. You can do those types of things. Count to 10, give it a moment to diffuse, and then respond. So instead of reacting, we respond. And we can have, it's fun to talk in theory about this, but what mindfulness does when you engage in mindfulness practices is it trains your body to do this naturally. So for example, when you do, whether it's yoga practice, and by the way, we're going to eventually do an episode more about yoga and mindfulness, but there are tons of different styles, tons of different ways, whether it's stress reduction tools, spirituality practices, to meditation. All of these things implement breath, they implement body awareness and down regulation. So, and when I say down regulation, just cooling your nervous system so you can respond in a way that's not reactive. In a sense, suicide is reactive. And when we are struggling with mental health, so if I'm going to go back to the example I shared in my personal life with learning to reclaim myself, I had only probably been practicing yoga at that point and when I, doing yoga and mindfulness practices for about 2 years. So this was several years ago, which is why I'm able to share this, because it's been baked and I've processed. I've done all the a lot of work around this to be able to share this today with you all. But when I look back, and I had this moment of a huge and I reacted when I found out. I mean, I was sick. I was so sick and so distraught. And I had to literally, I allowed myself, when I remember this, I literally laid on the ground on my belly. I had to plant myself because I felt like my world was falling apart. And so it's a tool like that sometimes when we feel like we can't hold things together, can we just slow time down with our breath, or just lay there, like just let yourself ground, or say, no, I'm not going anywhere for the rest of today. I just need to be and cozy up. I'm going to binge watch my Netflix and eat my ice cream and not shame myself. So mindfulness is it's deliberately choosing, right? So deliberately making choices. It's having an awareness to why and not being reactive. So that's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I know, I know in our group, we have weekly events, where some of our leaders, they host a mindfulness event. And I've sat through some of them, and they're really cool. You can just kind of lay there and just listen to some positive affirmations. You listen to some cool music, and you just really you just kind of find yourself just laying there and say, hey, let the noise of the day just stop and slow down. But I know for me, whenever I feel overwhelmed and I feel like, man, there's just so much going on in life. And again, it's always reflect back on, so how is this going to affect my kids? How is this going to affect my family? How is this going to affect, my peers and my community that is around me, so that I'm not reactive? But I think by nature, I think we are impulsive. We just like, oh, that person cut me off, or
it's survival.
Oh, yeah. That person is complaining at the grocery store about a long line, and they don't know what a line is. That I'll take you the Middle East where it's 120 degrees, and I'll, and standing in line just to get a meal or to make a phone call. I could tell you what it's like to be in a line, and it's sometimes we're so unaware of how good we have it here in the United States, and all the things we have. I think we just take it for granted that, I'm at Walmart and the self-checkout is taking forever. It's taking 5 minutes, or my Facebook page isn't loading, or my Instagram took 5 seconds to load. We're just in a hurry, again, low context. That's who we are. What I was going to get to is, I really enjoy kind of getting out and finding a trail. Maybe Eisenhower Park here in San Antonio. That's they have some cool trails. Kind of get out there by myself, get a rucksack with some water, just kind of hike the trails by myself. No company. I really enjoy that. I find myself, that's where I can think, I can center, and I can just process and really compartmentalize. Okay, this is a priority. This is something we can work through. This is just static. And then just really try to focus on what's important in life, and not necessarily be just caught up in every single little pebble that we're, or every single little ball that we're trying to juggle. Because it's hard. It's hard to try to juggle everything. It's impossible.
Right. Well, and the thing is that when you feel stressed out or triggered, and you find coping mechanisms like going for a run, or maybe if that's not, or a ruck, or going out in nature, if that's not accessible to you, it might be just taking a shower, or doing something just to change the sensory in your body, which will change your mood. So doing something small. And going back to when you're talking about how reactive, right, people are, it really is because we are such a hyper-aroused society. And I want to invite and just take a moment, especially for those that are struggling with the loss of someone who died by suicide, or who is personally struggling with these things. Maybe you know someone who struggles with these things, to offer compassion for how hard, when we are constantly hyper aroused, which is, it's like over exalted stress, right? Like we have chronic stress in our society. I mean, stress related illnesses are the number one problem in the healthcare system. It's the heaviest financial load. It's a big deal. And what this does is it causes us it triggers the inability for us to regulate. So it's our ability to hold both, that we live in a very inflammatory society. Our structures, the speed, how fast we go, and again, in the military, just drive on, right? Like, let's just go.
Let's just go.
And then of course for spouses, it's hard to, I know that it's hard for spouses to express to their partner, right? Of, hey, like, I'm struggling with this lifestyle, or I'm struggling with these things. And so it's tough. And our ability to have compassion for ourselves, and then you have the power. So if you're listening to this, you have the power to shift the way you engage with that hyperarousal, the way you engage with the inflammation. You have the power to choose if you have to keep up with the Joneses, or if you're going to honor what feels right for you. So going into self-care as prevention in a way, and marrying that with, when I shared this reclaiming of myself, that story, we forget that we have free will in our society. We really do. We forget that we have that free will choice.
Yeah, and I think that's super important. That I know in my friends and the circle that I surround myself with, I know we could volumes and volumes of bad experiences, but those bad experiences do not outweigh the all of the great experiences that we had. And I think there's a singer that says 99 problems, but
oh yeah,
one,
we know which one.
It's really, if there's 99 great things that happen in your life today, but we focus on the bad. We focus on the one bad. And I know for me, I've always tried to focus on the positive and just kind of work through the negative and just figure out a way to adapt to the situation, the environment. And again, and we have to be adaptable, otherwise we'll be paralyzed.
I love that you just said, like, and work through, because it's easy to bypass the hard stuff. Like I just shared, like, you want to hold both. And it's like the free will is really our new awareness that it's not, because the thing is it's a mental health challenge, because there are neurological and brain deficits. Like, there are things that are happening in your brain, but there are also ways that we can optimize it. And I love that you just talked about the group, because, ask yourself, who do you spend your time with? If you're surrounded by people that are very negative or critical and angry, you're going to be a byproduct of that. You're going to have that impact. Versus if you're surrounding yourself with communities who are fun and light, kind, compassionate.
I've read a meme, or I've read somewhere where it says you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And that's true, because, and again, you could fall into a group that's just bad. Everything's bad. Everything's horrible. Glass half empty. Or you can be in a group that's like, hey, let's just work through our situation, or find a way to use our energy for good.
Yeah.
And not just drown in our sorrow. But again, life is rated R. I mean, we're all carrying a burden. Every single one of us is carrying a burden. None of us are immune from death. None of us are immune from having friends or family members or that have attempted suicide, or maybe that we lost to suicide. And it's unfortunately, we can't unring that bell. We can't unring that bell, but we just need to do better. And it's simple. Sometimes just being there for somebody, listening to a long phone conversation, like, this person hasn't called, I've never talked to him, in forever, but they just wanted to talk to me. Take that phone call. Because or say hello to somebody in the morning that's typically quiet, or they feel disconnected, because you could be that one person, that one human that could change that person's outlook on life. And maybe, again, they'll take that next breath. They'll take that next step. It'll get them through the next day, right? And if you do enough of that, I think that is also helpful, along with some of the other resources that are out there for suicide prevention.
Yeah, like I think of it as just be a lighter essence to the room you're in. Can you just be a lighter, where it's like you allow laughter and you're softer, and just thinking about that. And then also, if you're struggling, giving yourself permission to let go of the people who you think you're supposed to be, or the person you think you're supposed to be, or, you know, what you think you're supposed to do, but lean into, it's like, what do you need for yourself? If you need to find a community that matches whatever your interests are in, maybe you don't know what your interests are in. I know it sounds kind of corny, but there's a lot of different like quizzes online to kind of get you connected to things that could be related to your passion. You know, it's how do we find meaning in life? And the other piece too, because I remember this was a struggle for, and I've worked with many spouses and people over the years who struggle with purpose. And when we started changing the conversation about life purpose, because it's like, I don't feel like I have life purpose. Well, life purpose is not just one life purpose. You will not have just one life purpose. You will have a purpose today and a new one tomorrow and a new one tomorrow. So it's about what brings you meaning today, what feels meaningful to you. You know, and asking yourself, how do you want to feel? So much, another piece of this too, is when we look at the future, so much of our goals, they're so material focused that we lose our sense of self in the process of attaining those goals. But if you ask yourself, okay, if I get that new car, or I get that promotion, or I get that PCS order, how will that make me feel? Oh, it'll make me feel loved. It'll make me feel connected. It will make me feel worthy. So how can we bring the feeling into the now moment where you're already feeling loved and connected and worthy?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll tell you that I think this is a great point I want to emphasize here. You know, we are probably the best. We are the best. I don't even know what the word is, but it'll come to me here as I'm thinking about this. But we know our friends, we know our family better than anybody else, right? So if the more time I spend with you on Mel, and we get to know each other, and the more time that you hang out with your yoga peers and other instructors, you kind of know what makes them tick. You know what drives them. You know what puts a smile on their face, right? So if we walk up to somebody and you know that they are acting or feeling out of character, or maybe they're not doing well, you know they're not doing well, or maybe they're drinking a little bit more, or maybe they're behaving erratically. We have to be ready to say, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay? And then be ready to respond and have the courage to ask that tough question. Are you thinking about committing suicide? Are you thinking about suicide?
Yeah.
And don't dance around the subject. If you want to be that beacon of hope, and you want to be a person that wants to intervene and help, ask the question. Don't dance around. Hey, are you doing okay? Are you thinking about doing some bad stuff to yourself? Ask the question. Are you thinking about suicide? And why are you thinking about suicide? What is making these thoughts? Why are these thoughts filling your mind right now? You know, what are you going through? And I know that's hard because that's personality driven too.
I was going to say, do you think men and women are different? Because I know what's interesting. Obviously, statistics show men are. It's. I believe I looked at the military statistics, and in the military, at least, men are more likely to die by suicide. But you know, the direct question of, do you find that men and women are different, or I don't know.
I don't know. I personally, I've gone from the spectrum of, hey, are you okay? Hey, you know, nudge, nudge. Are you okay? Yeah, we're fine. All right, we're good. To, are you thinking about committing suicide? Just direct, but it has taken a lifetime of going through experiences to say we can't dance around the subject if we really want to fix this, right? In my experience in the as a senior leader in the Air Force, the women seem to be more forthright and just saying, hey, I'm here to help. Are you thinking about suicide? And it felt like, and again, my experience, it felt like the guys were more shy, and they were like, I don't want to talk about that stuff. They were very standoffish, like, you don't want to talk about that stuff, dude. Like, that's taboo. Yeah. It was very taboo.
Yeah.
And it felt like the women were definitely more upfront, and they took charge of like, hey, I'm here to help, and I'm going to take care of you. So that's been my experience. So.
Yeah, and I think too for women, and I think about parents or mothers struggling with their kids around this kind of stuff too, is it's like you want to protect, you want to fix, and it's, you know, and save. And, you know, while as we're getting close to wrapping this up here soon, I want to remember that, you know, we can't force people to do anything, right? You can hold and try and do everything you can to support those struggling. You know, pulling in the resources, like if there is someone that you feel is, I mean, it is a life and death situation, pull in. So with the work I do in yoga therapy, I'm connected to a mental health, a group of mental health providers that if there is a situation where somebody's triggered or feeling very dark, I immediately ask them, like, do you want to get connected to a mental health provider? Because just in case that it's out of my scope. And then of course, my friends, it's a very different experience, right? Because I'm very motherly and let me fix and help and hold and here are the resources. But I have found as a provider, connecting other providers in has been really supportive when people are struggling. But then in my own life, there's also an aspect of learning to set my own boundaries of I can't save the world. They have to do it for themselves. You can give them all the boundaries you can, all the resources that you can. And this practice of, again, there's a lot of embodied paradox in this, right? Of, you know, doing everything you can to support and being more open, being a lighter essence, all the things Marty shared of ways to like ask and connect with people. And also remembering you're not a martyr. You can't make someone get help. And that's where it's like for you to connect with your purpose and your meaning and your self-care and honoring yourself because, you know, everybody has their own journey in this life of growth, of loss, and of change, you know, that we're all navigating in our own way.
Yeah. We also need to remember that we are all agents of change, right? We someone out there, whether it's our kids, one of our friends, or one of our siblings, somebody out there is looking up to us because we have it together, right? We're doing everything right in their eyes.
Yeah, I was going to say,
right?
So they think.
In their eyes, right? So
Yeah.
So be mindful that we are agents of change, even when we don't think like we're agents of change. Yeah. So I'll leave you. I'll leave you with this. You know, as we wrap up here, and I shared this numerous times with my kids and my students. I used to talk about there's three things that kind of make me tick and help me get through the day. And it's keep it simple, right? Just keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate your life. Don't try to overcomplicate your day. I know some of us are busy, but just even in a busy day, you can keep it simple. Like I'm gonna focus on what's important, but also find time to have fun in between. Second thing is don't forget to eat. Right? I know that's silly, but don't forget to eat. I think a lot of times in the hustle and bustle of our lives, and there's so many things going on, we forget to eat. And eating is so essential, right? Having that proper nutrition, hydration. I need a meal. You can't go days and days without eating, obviously, because that's not healthy. But two is the more you don't eat, compounded with your stress, now you got physiological, you got psychological. I mean, it's all compounding, and now it's even worse, right? And you know, if you're a student sitting in a classroom, you get hangry, right? That you've heard the term hangry. So keep it simple. Don't forget to eat. And more importantly, don't forget to smile. You talk about being that change agent. Probably the one universal nonverbal that you can have is a smile. So no matter where you are around the world, in any culture, when you smile, that translates into happiness, right?
It's the universal language of love.
The universal, right, is you smile. So think about you walking into your office or walking into a yoga studio or hosting an event, a suicide awareness and prevention walk event, and you show up and you're angry and you're just frustrated, and all that translates, and that energy is received by that group, and it's like, man, this isn't helping, right? But be mindful that, you know, you putting a smile on your face and modeling that behavior that you want that maybe can help that group around you, right? Those 5 people that you're the average of. Again, that's all very helpful, right? So keep it simple. Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to smile. And to me, that's a recipe for success, and it's helped me in my career. I've shared it with a number of students that I taught for the Air Force, and then my high school students who I hold near and dear to my heart. And by the way, one of my fantastic students that she pushed me toward to do something like this. We'll talk about her later on, but I definitely want to give her credit for putting me at risk and getting me out here to take part in something like this. But that's what I have to offer there, Mel.
See, and that what a beautiful example. Someone inspires you and says, hey, like you would be great on radio, or I don't know. I hear that's a joke. Like if someone tells you you're great on radio, doesn't that?
Yeah,
or
the
like,
face for radio.
Yeah,
I do have the face for radio, so that's actually,
Yeah.
that works out.
But you know how you never know how just a compliment can really inspire someone to believe in themselves to show up for something. So we all have that, and behind, like, there's stories of even why we're, you know, Marty and I are sitting here today of like, okay, is it good enough? Well, there's people that encourage. And so surrounding yourself with the community, there's, you know, it's hard. And I can say, you know, we'll talk more as with the military spouse community around finding connection, because it's challenging. And, you know, you go on Facebook, you try, and I love, you see it all the time, military spouses trying to connect with one another, but, you know, finding ways to get yourself out there, because no one's going to do it for you. You know, it's really up to you to to lean in, right? And it's tough, you know, to, again, as I said earlier, like it's tough conversations to talk about our own self-determination and our own motivation to show up and choose to experience life, right? It's challenging, but it's necessary. So I want to, as we prepare to close, Marty, where would you say, so for those, obviously this was a really powerful conversation, very vulnerable, and we appreciate each of you listening, holding this experience with us. Though you're not here in this moment, you are here and you are in our mind, and gratitude for holding this space so we can have open conversations like this. But Marty, you know, where would you suggest anybody go from here after listening to this episode? Any resources or last remarks to share?
So as we opened up, you know, we talked about the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So if you are, no kidding, you are not in a good place and you're feeling like that, like you need help, please call 1-800-273-8255. Call a friend. If you don't want to call the hotline, call a buddy, call a family member, somebody you haven't talked to in a while, and just have a conversation. And trust me, you having a conversation, you initiating a hug or you receiving a hug from somebody, it'll do wonders for you, right? So start there, right? But more importantly is just know that we're with you, know that you're not alone, and know that we are all carrying a burden and we can get through this. I know it's these last few months, this last year has been extremely challenging, right? And we've experienced a lot of loss. Again, just don't feel like you're alone. We're here with you.
Thank you for that. And my last words would be, you know, a few things. Don't ever underestimate the power of your own breath. A big sigh in, or big breath in and sigh out, can do wonders for changing your mood if you're feeling very stuck. And even stretching or moving your body, get your body moving. Or if you can't get out of bed, just reach your arms above your head and open your hands and take a few moments there. You know, life is just, you know, sometimes we have to give time. And sometimes all we can do is take it one breath at a time. You know, thank you, Marty, for sharing those resources. We hope to continue this conversation as, you know, the way we address this and looking at the human in someone, being able to also focus so much more on what is right with you. You know, when we look at Operation Within, this program, this podcast is really about optimizing what's right with you. You know, there's so many programs out there that it goes on and on about all the things wrong with you, all the things we need to fix, all the things we need to heal. But we want to come at this as, no, what brings you joy, and how can we amplify that joy for you in your life where you can be part of these experiences and part of these conversations? Because when we expand what is right within us, right, the light overpowers that dark. And sometimes there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to learn how to turn our own lights on. So we're here with you. We honor you, and thank you for listening to this episode of Operation Within.